quiet, forgotten town of Ravenswood, nestled deep within a dense, foreboding forest, an eerie fog descended upon the landscape. The townspeople had long given up on explaining the perpetual darkness that hung over their once thriving community. They whispered tales of ancient curses and vengeful spirits that seemed to shroud Ravenswood in a perpetual gloom. Amidst this sinister backdrop, a name was whispered with dread and trepidation: Grimgor. He was no ordinary demon. He was a being of pure malevolence, whose insatiable appetite for causing fear and chaos drove him to unspeakable acts of horror. On the outskirts of town, in a decrepit and abandoned cabin, a group of paranormal investigators gathered. The cabin itself was a macabre relic of a bygone era, its weathered walls adorned with sinister symbols and faded portraits of the long-deceased. Shadows danced eerily in the corners of the room, and the air was thick with a foreboding presence that seemed to whisper secrets too ghastly to comprehend. Among the investigators was Sarah, a fearless journalist with a penchant for uncovering the truth behind the darkest legends. The team was led by Professor Alexander Reed, a seasoned expert in the occult, whose eyes bore the weight of countless encounters with the supernatural, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. The cabin was a fortress of books and artifacts, each one holding a piece of the puzzle about Grimgor's origins. The wind howled through the trees outside, and the faint sound of an ominous whisper seemed to echo within the cabin's walls, as if the very building itself harbored the secrets of the malevolent entity. Professor Reed explained to the group that Grimgor was not merely a demon. He was a cursed soul who had once been a human. In life, he was a reclusive tailor, known for creating the most exquisite garments. But his obsession with perfection led him down a dark path. He became consumed by the idea of spreading fear through whispers and shadows. One fateful night, Grimgor made a pact with a malevolent entity, granting him the power to manipulate fear and darkness. His once handsome face was now a menacing visage, exuding an aura of dread that chilled the hearts of those who encountered him. As the investigators delved deeper into their research, the temperature in the cabin plummeted, and strange symbols appeared on the walls, etched in blood-red ink that seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own. It was as if Grimgor's presence had become manifest, a shadowy specter lurking just beyond the edge of perception. They knew they were not alone in that wretched place. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl pierced the air, reverberating through the very foundations of the cabin. One of the investigators, Tom, had disappeared. Panic seized the group as they rushed to find him, but all they discovered was a cryptic message scrawled on the cabin's wall, written in a language they could not understand. Grimgor had left his mark, and the walls seemed to close in around them, as if the very room conspired to keep them trapped. Desperation and fear settled upon the group like a suffocating shroud. Sarah's determination grew stronger, and she insisted they continue their investigation, vowing to reveal the truth about Grimgor and bring an end to his reign of terror. Days turned into weeks as the investigators uncovered more about Grimgor's history. They learned that his cabin was the epicenter of his power and the source of his malevolence. Inside, they found cryptic writings and eerie artifacts that hinted at his ability to manipulate fear and darkness, relics that seemed to pulse with an unholy life. As they delved deeper into the cabin, they discovered a hidden chamber adorned with ancient symbols, carved into the stone walls by long-forgotten hands. Professor Reed realized that this chamber was the key to defeating Grimgor, but it would require a dangerous ritual, one that would draw Grimgor out of hiding and into their trap, a ritual that threatened to unleash unspeakable horrors upon them all. Sarah, Professor Reed, and the remaining investigators prepared for the final confrontation. Their nerves stretched to the breaking point. The cabin was adorned with protective wards, and the air was thick with anticipation, heavy with the scent of dread. They knew that Grimgor would not go down without a fight, and the very walls of the cabin seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy that threatened to consume them. In the dead of night, Grimgor's presence filled the cabin, a palpable darkness that seemed to seep from the very pores of the walls. His menacing aura of fear and darkness surrounded them, causing the candles to flicker and cast eerie, shifting shadows across the room. But the investigators stood resolute, their hearts pounding, but their will unbroken, their very souls a battleground for the forces of light and darkness. A tense standoff ensued as Grimgor tried to instill terror in their hearts. Shadows danced across the room, and eerie whispers filled the air, each word laced with the essence of fear itself, a cacophony of torment that threatened to shatter their sanity. But the investigators remained steadfast, resisting the fear that Grimgor sought to sow. Their voices joined in a desperate chant that reverberated through the haunted cabin. With a final burst of determination, they completed the ritual, sealing Grimgor's powers and imprisoning him within the chamber's ancient symbols. The room filled with a blinding light, and Grimgor's menacing form was banished, his howls of rage and frustration echoing into the void, a symphony of despair that sent shivers down their spines. Ravenswood emerged from the darkness, and the town's long-standing curse was finally lifted. But the scars of their harrowing encounter would forever mar the investigators' souls, a constant reminder of the terrors that lurked in the shadows. The legend of Grimgor would live on in whispered tales, a reminder of the horrors that could lurk in the darkest corners of the world. But for Sarah and her team, they had confronted the demon of fear and darkness, emerging victorious over the malevolent forces that had plagued Ravenswood for far too long. And as the investigators left the accursed cabin behind, they couldn't help but wonder what other terrors lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered by those who dared to seek the truth.